Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's case is going to be that of Sarah Yarborough, and it is a case of a 16-year-old girl who was just sat waiting to join her drill team to go on this sort of trip thing that they were going on where they would practice and whatever. She never made it. Some horrible evil person stole her life, and it's about the journey of trying to get that person behind bars, because trust me, it took quite a while, 30 years around about. So yeah, let's jump right in. Sarah Louise Yarborough was born on the 12th of June in 1975 in Portland, Oregon. Sarah was described as being creative, smart. She was able to make friends very easily, quite confident. She was feisty. She was just such a lovely young woman. She always had a smile on her face, and she lived her life by the mantra like carpe diem, like seize the day. And she was just loved by all of her family and friends. She also had one brother. Sarah was an A student, and you know, she just had such a fiery spark to her life. Like, she loved every minute of it. Right, now let's jump to the Friday the 13th of December in 1991. Right, her parents was actually going out of town. They were taking her brother to a soccer game. Sarah didn't want to go because she had her plans for the weekend worked out. She was gonna go with the drill team the next day, like I already said. And her friend was coming over, so they decided that they were gonna go get some junk food and, you know, just have like a sleepover. She was staying over, so that's what they did. So her mother didn't really want to leave her, but Sarah didn't want to go, and so they did. They parted ways, they said their goodbyes, and that was that. Now we're talking about the next day, which is the 14th of December. Sarah actually woke up in the morning and she was panicking. She was like, I am late for getting to the school to meet the drill team. So she's panicking. She shoves on a drill outfit. She says goodbye to her friend, and off she goes. She drives to school, and the school was Federal Way High School. The rest of the drill team were going to be there, and they were heading to a competition. When Sarah actually got there, she realized that she wasn't late at all. In fact, she was very early. So she packed up in her car and she waited for everyone else to turn up. Then you catch the bus being loaded up with all of the drill team, all of her friends and her classmates getting on, but Sarah was not there, and she never made it onto that bus. Now, it would only take an hour before Sarah's body was recovered, so it was like before they even knew she was missing, probably, because at 9 a.m, two young boys, I believe they were 12 or 13, came out of the home and they were gonna go skateboarding. So they skipped through the school like they normally would do, hopped a fence because it was a shortcut, and they start heading towards where they were going. On the way, they're messing around, playing like kids do. It was very, very cold that morning, they said. So, you know, like when the mud is wet and it freezes up and you've got the icicles, they were jumping in all them and popping them, and they said it sounded like glass shattering. You know, just having fun, being kids. And then off in the distance, they saw there was like, at the end, this row of bushes, like really tall shrubbery. And as they're heading towards it, this man just stands up out of it and he stares at them. And they're a little bit like, whoa, bit freaked out, but he clocks the boys and then he walks off. So they carry on. They think, he's just been doing whatever, smoking a bit of the green stuff, or I don't know, taking a leak, who knows. But they're just thinking nothing of it really. So they carry on walking. He's in front of them. But as they get closer to where this man was, they find something horrific and very scarring for them to find at such a young age. It was a female's body. And this man, who had just come from the area, was just ahead of them. And at this point, when they found her, he had like turned around and he's just staring at them. And they are like, oh my gosh. And this body was dressed in a drill outfit. A drill uniform, sorry. When the police were called and they arrived, they looked at the clothing. The clothing, I don't believe she was dressed at the time. The clothing was to the side of her, and she actually had some nylon stockings tied around her neck as a ligature. And the boys said, it was said that, you know, she looked like she had fought for her life as well, which is absolutely heartbreaking. And when they looked at the clothes, they said the name Sarah inside of them. They soon found out that this was the body of Sarah Yarborough. Now, her car that she had been waiting in for the rest of the drill team to come up was 150 yards away. That's all. And her body was right there on the school grounds. She had been beaten, strangled, and they initially thought that she had been SA'd, but it turns out later on when they did the autopsy and whatnot, she hadn't been. Obviously, her family was informed and they were absolutely devastated. Her friends, everyone just couldn't even just believe it, because most people never think that it's going to happen to them. They never think it's going to happen to their kid, their friend, their family member, brother, sister, you know. That's just how you go through your life. Nobody ever contemplates that this could happen. But it can, and it does. And when it's close to you and it happens to you, it's absolutely beyond devastating. She was 16 years old. 16. Her entire life ahead of her. And such a beautiful, fiery young woman as well. It is devastating. Now, the good thing about this case was the boys had seen the person that had killed Sarah. They gave a description. They did like a sketch of this person, their estimated age, blah, 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 blah. Because it was literally burned into these boys' heads, you know, seeing something like that and then finding something like that is just, I can't even imagine. It definitely changed their lives and it scarred them, as you can imagine. The police jumped on it straight away. They got like 2,500 tips. They poured over everything they could. And like I said, they had the sketch, and not only that, they had a massive key important piece of evidence, which was they had a full male DNA profile of the person that had done this to Sarah. Well, when they put it in the database, don't forget this is the 90s, it didn't come back with a match. So them days, the only way to figure this out was if this person had already committed a crime and the DNA was already on the system. Okay, but this person wasn't, nothing flagged up. Years and years would go by without ever finding Sarah's killer. Only a handful of people were brought up as possible suspects, but then nothing ever, happened with that. You know, they never found who killed her. Sarah's classmates went on to graduate high school without her, and they've always said that, you know, everything that was good in their life that they should have celebrated, there was always a massive sadness that came with it, because like survivor's guilt, you know, Sarah should have been there with them. She should have been enjoying that. So they always felt like the guilty and just the sorrow of that. And Sarah's mum really did support her friends. And they supported each other actually, because they would go to her over the years of Sarah not being there. I want to see if Sarah would approve of this guy as a boyfriend for me, you know? And equally, she would watch them when they graduated at high school. Sadly, she couldn't be there for her daughters because her daughter was no longer here, but she could be there for other friends. And that is such immense bravery. To be able to do that, I find that absolutely amazing. But she felt like it helped her as well, because, you know, she saw her friends graduate, and that was a joy for her to do. And as everyone's life went on, nobody would ever forget about Sarah Yarborough. But many, many years did pass, like 28 years later. And we're now up to 2018 after that. The initial composite sketch was updated because clearly the person whom it depicted would now be like almost 30 years older than that. So they did that. And they did like a poly DNA thing as well, but sadly they joined up with some people, and sadly that didn't, you know, create any new leads either. There was a remembrance bench made for Sarah as well, and it's absolutely really beautiful. It has some things encased in bronze, like her favourite things, and a statue of a dog, and it was just such a lovely thing. And there was a guy called David Fuller who had helped. He was a long-time family friend, and he had helped to uncover this, and he also was devastated by Sarah's loss. and her younger brother Andrew was just so proud to have something like this in memory of Sarah, so that's really lovely. I'll put a picture of it up as well. Bill Fuller. Bill Fuller was a family friend. Not David, sorry. This case then there was a new thing happening called genetic genealogy. I think this was about 2011. And the investigators decided that they were going to reach out with regards to Sarah's case to a woman who's called Colleen Fitzpatrick, and she is one of the pioneers of genetic genealogy. She offered her services. It was very new at the time, like nothing existed, with regards to that at all before. She just wanted to test it out. She wanted to offer it out for free to see whether it was a reliable tool to help in these, and the Yarborough family was very keen on going ahead with that, so they did. And when Colleen looked into all of this and did the magic that she does, because I don't know what all that stuff is, so I'm not even going to pretend, she came up with a name, and that name was Bill Fuller. Now, everyone was like, I don't think so. Bill is the one who was a longtime friend who loved Sarah. He helped to unveil like her bench and stuff. And he also didn't meet the age range because he was in like his 60s or 70s at this point. So 20 years before, he would have been, 30. He would have been a lot older, like 40s, something like that. He would have been older than the sketch, who these boys saw. So he didn't fit in that sense. But what they then looked into was, okay, so it's not Bill, but we've got a last name now. The last name is Fuller, and we're going to look down the Fuller family line, and we are going to try and look through that and see whether anybody else sticks out. Oh, that was it as well. They got a DNA testing off Bill Fuller, and it didn't match the killers that they had. So they knew it definitely was not him, but maybe somehow or somewhere down the line, it was connected to Bill. Then in September of 2019, bearing in mind in 2018 the Golden State Killer had been caught by using this exact same thing, so that sparked a real hope in Sarah's case too. So let's jump September 2019, and two names popped out in the Fuller family tree. It was two new possible suspects, and they were brothers, Edward and Patrick Nicholas. Now, I believe Edward already had his DNA in the system for crimes previous. They had a look to see whether that matched, and it did not. So then they zoned in on Patrick Nicholas. In that year, he was 55 years old, but back in 1991, he would have been 27. He had a colourful history. He had served time in prison in 1983 for attempted rape, but his DNA was never submitted into CODIS for some reason or another, which is why they never got the match all those years ago, which is obviously very sad. Then in 93, he had another arrest for molestation. He pled guilty to that one and got a lesser charge of 4th degree gross misdemeanor assault. And just like before, he never got his DNA put into CODIS again, which is annoying again. It wasn't the only thing that happened. Now, that case of attempted rape in 1983, let me just give you a bit more information on that. So this was 8 years before Sarah's murder. A young lady called Anne Croney, I think she was 21. At the time, she was sat in a car alongside this river, and he approached her car. She said that he seemed normal, quite friendly. I believe he was 19 at the time. This is Patrick. I believe he was 19. Just seemed like a normal guy, and they were chatting away. He said he was new to the area, so she said that she actually asked him if he'd done any water skiing, because he said he was new, and he said that he couldn't swim. And then she got creeped out because his voice started to get really shaky, and she did not like the vibe that he was giving off, so she was like, right, I've got to go now. And that is when he pulled a knife out, held it to her throat, and told her to walk to the river. And he actually told her his name as well. He told her that he was called Pat Nicholas. I believe he made her undress too. And as she got close to the river, she was like on the ball, because she ran straight into that river, dove in, and started swimming away as fast as she could. Because Patrick had said that he couldn't swim, which I wouldn't even like to think what happened if he hadn't let that slip, that piece of innocent information may have saved her life. And honestly, it's just stunning. So she swam and swam. Eventually, some passerbys on the other side found her and she managed to escape. She went to court, he did time for it, she asked for the worst sentence, the longest sentence possible, which was 10 years. The judge agreed with her. He got the 10 years, but he only didn't serve all of them, which is really annoying because if he would have served the full 10-year sentence, he would not have been free to kill Sarah. But because he did not serve the full sentence, he was out and he killed her. So what the police did is much like the Golden State Killer. They waited around, they watched Patrick, they waited for him to drop something with his DNA on. And that's exactly what he did. He thought that after 30 years in the clear, or however long it had been at that point, that, you know, no one was watching him. Nobody thought it was him. And when they looked back at their initial list of suspects, when Sarah was murdered, he was not on them. So they just didn't have a clue about him at all. But he ended up dropping this cigarette and also a handkerchief or something that fell out of his pocket. So they got both of those. They tested his DNA against the DNA that they had collected off of Sarah's clothes, which was a semen sample. I don't think she was actually essayed, like I said, but obviously it was sexual in nature. Maybe he was going to do it after and he didn't have time because the boys found him. I don't know. I don't want to think about it. But anyway, guess what? It came back as a match. Thank goodness. So in October 2019, Patrick was arrested for the murder of Sarah Yarborough all them years ago. Almost 3 decades later, the case was finally solved. Now, in his trial, they did try and say that, you know, genealogy isn't a thing that we should be going off. It's not really proven. It's not really this, blah, 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 blah. But, and they didn't allow his history in either. You know, like his previous rape charges, because they didn't want to, I don't know, sway the jury unnecessarily and make him think that just because he did that in the past doesn't mean that he's the one that killed Sarah or whatever. But yeah, he got found guilty. Yay. And also, what I absolutely loved, the family got up and they did all their testimonies, and so did Anne. She came up and she spoke at the trial, and she said that his face was a picture because I bet he never thought he would have ever seen her face again. And yeah, she spoke up at his trial as well, and said how sorry she was about Sarah and how devastating and what an evil, vicious man he was. I would have loved to have seen his face though when he saw her. He got nearly 46 years in prison for Sarah's murder, which probably means that he will never ever get out. It's really sad that he had 30 years of freedom before that, 30 years that Sarah never got because of this evil freaking monster, disgusting person. But I'm just glad that finally he was caught. And yeah, that is the end of this case. Thank you so much for watching. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you would like to. But yeah, that's all I have today on the case of Sarah Yarborough. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.